Hey fam, how y'all doing today? Welcome back to History Highlights with Laney. We are rounding out Black History Month. In today's video, I will highlight African American history. African American history began with the arrival of Africans to North America in the 16th and 17th centuries. Former Spanish slaves who had been freed by Francis Drake arrived aboard the Golden Hen in California in 1579. The European colonization of the Americas and transatlantic slave trade led to a large-scale transportation of enslaved Africans across the Atlantic. Roughly 10 to 12 million Africans, which were sold by the Barbary slave trade to European slavers into slavery or servitude in the Americas. After arriving in various European colonies in North America, the enslaved Africans were sold to white colonists, primarily to work on cash crop plantations. A group of enslaved Africans arrived in the English colony of Virginia in 1619, marking the beginning of slavery in the colonial history of the United States. By 1776, roughly 20% of British North American population was of African descent, both free and enslaved. The American Revolutionary War, which was the 13th colony, became independent and transformed into the United States, led to great social upheavals of African Americans. Black soldiers fought on both the British and the American sides. And after the conflict ended, the northern United States gradually abolished slavery. However, the American South, which had an economic dependent on plantations operations by slave labor, entrenched the slave system and expanded it during the westward expansion of the United States. During this period, numerous enslaved African Americans escaped into free states and Canada via the Underground Railroad. Disputes over slavery between the northern and southern states led to the American Civil War, in which 178,000 African Americans served on the Union side. During the war, President Abraham Lincoln issued the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, or should I say, which abolished slavery in the United States. After the war ended with the Confederate defeat, the Reconstruction era began, in which African Americans living in the South were granted equal rights with their white neighbors. However, white opposition to these advancements led to most African Americans living in the South to be disenfranchised, and a system of racial segregation known as the Jim Crow laws was passed in the southern states. Beginning in the early 20th century, in response to poor economic conditions, segregation, and lynchings, over 6 million, primarily rural African Americans, migrated out of the South to other regions of the United States in search of opportunity. The nadir of American race relations led to civil rights efforts to overturn discrimination and racism against African Americans. In 1954, these efforts coalesced into a broad, unified movement led by civil rights activists such as Martin Luther King Jr., which succeeded in persuading the federal government to pass Civil Rights Act, which succeeded in persuading the federal government to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed racial discrimination. The 2020 United States Census reported that roughly 47 million people identified as African Americans, which is roughly 14.2% of the American population. African Americans have made major contributions to the culture of the United States of America. So, don't stop learning about the contributions of African Americans after February ends. So there you have it, a little bit of history on African American history. Be well, stay safe, and stay in peace, not pieces. Hit that bell so you will know every time I upload a video. Word of the year, peace. Peace. Deuces. Love y'all, fam. See you soon.